working on Van Loo. Oh, Clark, pretty step back.
Welcome back to Clark USA fans. Everyone is watching the wrong player. When Caitlin Clark stepped into the Indiana Fever, the entire basketball world erupted. The headlines, the sold-out arenas, the TV ratings exploding overnight, the endless debates, everything suddenly revolved around one name. Every camera followed her. Every defense adjusted for her. Every conversation started and ended with her impact on the game. But while the spotlight stayed locked on Clark, something far more calculated was happening just outside that light. Two players, Sophie Cunningham and Lexie, weren't chasing attention. They weren't trying to go viral. They were doing something much more dangerous. They were evolving. Quietly. Deliberately. Ruthlessly. Because when a generational player like Caitlin Clark enters your league, everything changes. The pace changes. The expectations change. The margin for error disappears. And every player is forced into a decision: adapt or disappear. There is no middle ground. And while most players struggle with that reality, hesitate, or wait for coaches to guide them, Cunningham and Hull saw it coming in real time. They didn't complain. They didn't resist. They didn't try to hold on to who they used to be. They weaponized the change. This isn't just a story about Caitlin Clark. This is about what happens in the shadow of greatness, where careers are either buried or reborn. And these two players made one of the smartest, most calculated adjustments in modern women's basketball. To understand just how extreme this transformation is, you have to understand who Sophie Cunningham used to be. For years, Cunningham built her identity on physicality. She wasn't just a role player, she was an enforcer. The kind of player who set brutal screens, absorbed contact without hesitation, and responded to aggression with even more intensity. She thrived in chaos. She embraced collisions. She played like every possession was a battle. At around 165 pounds, she had the frame to dominate physically. She used it to carve out a role in a league that doesn't give second chances. Her toughness made her valuable. Her presence made her respected. Her aggression made her feared. That was her identity. And for 6 years, it worked. But then Caitlin Clark arrived, and suddenly, that identity wasn't enough. Because Clark doesn't play a slow, physical, half-court game. She plays at a speed that breaks defenses before they even set. She stretches the floor in ways that demand constant movement. She creates opportunities that only exist for a split second, and if you're not ready, you miss them. Cunningham saw that instantly. She studied the film. She analyzed the numbers. She watched how the offense truly functioned at full speed. And then she made a decision that most athletes would never have the courage to make. She destroyed the version of herself that had kept her in the league. And she rebuilt from scratch. Not because she wanted to, but because she understood something most players ignore. The league doesn't care who you used to be. It only cares about who you are right now and whether you still fit. Instead of waiting for the coaching staff to adjust her role, or worse, replace her, Cunningham replaced herself first. And the transformation wasn't small. She dropped significant body weight, cutting down to a leaner, faster, more efficient version of herself. For an elite athlete, that's not a casual change. That's a complete physical and mental reset.
Point performance right here, handling the physicality of Beniza Laney, with which Caitlin.
It means sacrificing comfort. It means letting go of habits built over years. It means accepting that your old strengths might now be weaknesses. And in Cunningham's case, it was also about survival. Coming off a knee injury, every extra pound becomes a risk. In a fast-paced system like Clark's, where sprinting, stopping, and changing direction happens constantly, the stress on the body multiplies. The physics don't lie. The margin for error gets smaller with every possession. So Cunningham didn't just lose weight, she optimized herself. She became faster, lighter, more explosive, because she understood exactly what the new system rewards. Caitlin Clark's vision is unlike anything the game has seen. She sees plays before they happen. She delivers passes most players wouldn't even attempt. Full-court outlets, cross-court lasers, perfectly timed assists that turn a small advantage into an easy score. But here's the catch. The opportunity only exists if you're already moving. If you hesitate, it's gone. If you're slow, you're irrelevant. If you're not ready to run, you're invisible. Cunningham realized she was losing that race too often. So she changed the equation. Now, instead of fighting in the paint, she's sprinting in transition. Instead of absorbing contact, she's creating space. Instead of reacting to the game, she's anticipating it. She's becoming the player waiting in the corner when Clark fires that impossible pass. And that's where the real danger begins. Because Cunningham isn't just adapting, she's becoming more efficient than ever. A high-percentage shooter. A fast break finisher. A player who doesn't need the ball to impact the game but knows exactly where to be when it arrives. And she's not alone. Lexie Hull is making similar adjustments, refining her role, sharpening her decision-making, and aligning herself with the rhythm of a system built around speed and precision. This is what separates good players from smart players. Good players rely on what made them successful in the past. Smart players study the future and rebuild themselves to fit it. Cunningham watched what happened to teammates who struggled to adjust early on. Players who came into the system playing at the wrong pace, carrying habits from a slower style of basketball and paying the price for it. She refused to go through that phase. She showed up ready to run, ready to shoot, ready to fit into a system that doesn't wait for anyone to catch up. And that's what makes this transformation so dangerous. Because while everyone else is still focused on Caitlin Clark, and rightfully so, players like Cunningham and Hull are turning that attention into an advantage. Defenses are stretched thin trying to contain Clark. And in those moments, when the defense breaks, when the rotation is late, when the help doesn't arrive, that's when these players strike. Wide open shots. Easy transition buckets. Efficient scoring opportunities created by someone else's gravity, but finished by their preparation. This is the hidden layer of Clark's impact. She doesn't just elevate herself. She forces everyone around her to evolve. And the ones who embrace that evolution don't just survive, they thrive. So while the world keeps watching the obvious superstar, don't miss what's happening behind the scenes. Because sometimes, the most important story isn't the one in the spotlight. It's the one being built in the shadows, quietly, strategically, and with absolute precision. And by the time everyone notices, it's already too late.
Comes off a pin down here, wide open. Bang!
Physical transformation is only half the story unfolding in Indianapolis right now. The other half? It's far more dangerous. Because beyond the weight loss, the speed adjustments, and the on-court evolution, there's a silent battle happening behind the scenes, a political minefield that could either turn the Indiana Fever into a championship contender, or completely derail everything before the season even finds its rhythm. And at the center of this storm is one decision. A decision that hasn't been publicly confirmed yet, but one that will define everything. Because no matter how hard players like Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull have worked to adapt, no matter how perfectly they've reshaped their games to fit the new reality, it can all be undone instantly. One lineup choice. One philosophical mistake. One moment where politics outweigh performance. That's all it takes. The Indiana Fever made a major move this offseason by bringing in a new head coach, Stephanie White. A respected name. A veteran presence. Someone deeply connected to the league and, more importantly, deeply connected to the players who came before Caitlin Clark reshaped everything. On paper, it looks like stability. In reality, it introduces risk. Because with that experience comes a natural tendency, loyalty to veterans, trust in traditional systems, and a coaching philosophy built before the game was forced to evolve at this level of speed. And that creates a dangerous question. Will the system fully commit to Caitlin Clark's style of play, or will it try to balance it? Because that word balance is where teams like this fall apart. There's a very real concern among analysts and insiders who understand this roster deeply. The fear is simple, that the coaching staff might attempt to slow things down. That they might lean into a more traditional rotation. That they might prioritize isolation scoring, distribute touches more evenly, and try to keep everyone satisfied. It sounds fair. It sounds logical. It sounds like good leadership. But in reality, it's the fastest way to destroy what makes this team special. You do not take the most explosive offensive engine the sport has ever seen and put limits on it. You don't reduce its speed. You don't dilute its impact. You don't ask it to wait. You build everything around it. You commit fully or you fail. Because Caitlin Clark is not just another star player. She is a system. A force that bends the structure of the game itself. And when you have something like that, you don't compromise with it, you maximize it. And this is exactly where Lexie Hull becomes the most important piece on the board. Not the loudest name, not the biggest headline, but the most essential decision. Because Hull represents the perfect modern role player in a system built for speed, spacing, and precision. She doesn't need the ball to be effective. She doesn't demand touches. She doesn't slow the offense down with isolation plays. Instead, she does the things that actually make the system work. She defends relentlessly on the perimeter. She applies constant pressure. She moves without stopping. She stretches the floor with efficient shooting. She understands positioning. She understands timing. She understands her role. And most importantly, she accepts it. That's rare. Because in professional sports, especially at the highest level, players often equate value with touches, with usage, with how often the ball is in their hands. Hull doesn't. She equates value with impact. And when she's on the floor alongside Clark and Cunningham, something incredible happens. The geometry of the game changes. The spacing becomes nearly impossible to defend. 3 players who can shoot. 3 players who can move. 3 players who can force the defense to stretch beyond its limits. And in the middle of it all, a point guard who can see and exploit every single weakness. Passing lanes open that shouldn't exist. Defenders get pulled out of position. Rotations break down. And suddenly, what looks like a normal possession turns into an easy scoring opportunity. It's not luck. It's design. But here's where things get complicated. Because history shows that coaching staffs often overthink situations like this. They feel pressure to reward veterans, to give minutes to players with bigger reputations, to maintain harmony in the locker room, to justify past decisions, to balance egos. And every time that happens, the system suffers. We've already seen glimpses of it. Lineups where Hull was benched in favor of slower, high-usage players who needed the ball in their hands. Players who disrupted the spacing. Players who clogged the lanes. Players who forced the offense into situations it was never meant to operate in. And the result? Everything stalled.
Glass and the pressure as Bonner can't hit. Benley the rebound.
The ball stopped moving. The pace slowed down. Clark was forced into difficult, contested situations. And the very thing that made the team dangerous disappeared. But every time Hull returned, everything snapped back. The floor opened up again. The transitions became faster. The ball movement returned. The offense flowed the way it was designed to. This isn't speculation. It's not opinion. It's backed by data. It's visible on film. It's undeniable. The best version of this team exists when Lexie Hull is on the floor alongside Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. The question is, will that reality be respected or ignored? Because this isn't just a basketball decision. It's a political one. It's about choosing between what works and what keeps everyone comfortable. And in the world of elite competition, those two things are rarely the same. One wrong decision here doesn't just affect a game. It affects the entire season. Because the margin for error in what can be called the Caitlin Clark economy is incredibly small. Everything is amplified. Every mistake is exposed. Every inefficiency is punished. And if the system breaks even slightly, it doesn't bend. It collapses. But while all of this is happening on the court, something even more fascinating is unfolding off it. Because Lexie Hull isn't just adapting as a player. She's thinking like a strategist. While fans debate rotations and analysts argue about coaching decisions, Hull is quietly making one of the smartest business moves the league has ever seen. She's stepping into a space that has historically been closed off to players like her. For decades, role players in women's basketball have relied heavily on their salaries. They didn't get massive endorsement deals. They didn't land major advertising campaigns. They didn't benefit from the kind of attention that turns athletes into global brands. That spotlight was reserved for superstars. Everyone else? They fought for what was left. They played overseas. They supplemented their income however they could. They survived. But Hull saw something different. She saw an opportunity hidden inside proximity. Because playing next to Caitlin Clark means existing in the most valuable space in the sport, the space right next to the most watched player on the planet. And in today's attention-driven economy, proximity equals visibility. Visibility equals influence. And influence can be turned into business. So instead of waiting for opportunities to come to her, Hull created one. She launched a direct-to-consumer cosmetics brand designed specifically for high-performance athletes. At first glance, it might seem like just another athlete-backed product. But it's not. Because the strategy behind it is built on something most people overlook: the cost of attention. In traditional business models, the hardest and most expensive part is customer acquisition. Getting people to notice you. Getting them to care. Getting them to engage. It requires massive marketing budgets. Massive risk. Massive time. But Hull? She's already positioned in front of one of the largest and fastest-growing audiences in sports. Every game, every broadcast, every highlight, every moment where cameras are locked onto Caitlin Clark. She's right there. Visible. Relevant. Connected to the moment. And that changes everything. Because instead of spending millions trying to reach customers, she's building a brand in a space where attention already exists. That's not just smart. That's revolutionary. It's a blueprint that could reshape how role players think about their careers, not just in basketball, but across all sports. Because it proves something powerful. You don't have to be the superstar to win. You just have to understand the system and position yourself perfectly within it. So while the world continues to focus on Caitlin Clark, and rightfully so, the real story might be happening just beside her. In the decisions being made. In the risks being taken. In the players who refuse to stay the same. Because in this new era of basketball, survival doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to the smartest. And right now, in Indianapolis, the smartest players are already making their move.
Indiana trying to look inside. Going through this zone. Cross.
Here's something most people don't understand about modern sports, and honestly, about modern business too. Attention is the most expensive currency in the world right now. Companies spend millions, sometimes tens of millions, just to capture a few seconds of it. Think about it. Brands pour insane budgets into platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, fighting for visibility in an overcrowded digital space. They design campaigns, hire influencers, run ads nonstop, all for one simple goal: get someone to stop scrolling for 3 seconds. 3 seconds. And even after spending all that money, most of them still fail. Most direct-to-consumer brands burn through cash before they ever see a profit. Some never recover. Some disappear quietly. The economics are ruthless, unforgiving, and brutally competitive. Now here's where everything flips. Because players like Lexie Hull, they don't have that problem. They don't need to spend a single dollar on ads. They don't need to fight for impressions. They already have them. Every single time Hull steps onto the court next to Caitlin Clark, she's standing in front of millions of eyes. Not potential viewers, guaranteed viewers. Not low engagement traffic, high intensity, emotionally invested fans who are locked into every movement, every play, every moment. And that kind of attention? You can't buy it. You can only earn it or position yourself next to it. Every pregame tunnel walk, every postgame interview, every highlight clip, every social media post, Hull is generating organic exposure that brands would spend millions trying to replicate. And she's doing it naturally. Effortlessly. Strategically. Because the Indiana Fever fan base isn't just large, it's deeply engaged. These aren't casual viewers. These are fans who follow the team closely, who support the players around Caitlin Clark, who pay attention to who contributes, who hustles, who fits the system. And Hull has placed herself perfectly inside that ecosystem. She's not just another player on the roster. She's part of the inner circle around the most watched player in women's basketball. And now, she's converting that position into something much bigger than basketball. This is what you call the Caitlin Clark halo effect. Clark draws the spotlight everywhere she goes. From arenas to airports, from interviews to social media trends, she is the center of attention at all times. The cameras follow her. The audience follows her. The conversation revolves around her. But here's the key detail most people miss: that spotlight doesn't exist in isolation. It spills over. And the players closest to it? They benefit the most. Smart players understand this. And instead of waiting for the league to increase salaries or hoping for endorsement deals that may never come, they're taking control. They're building something for themselves. Independent. Scalable. Owned. Lexie Hull didn't just recognize the opportunity, she acted on it. She stepped beyond traditional paths and launched her own direct-to-consumer cosmetics brand, built specifically for high-performance athletes. And this isn't just a random side project or a temporary experiment. This is calculated. This is strategic. This is long-term thinking in a space where most players are focused only on the next game. Because Hull understands something fundamental: if you control the product and you control the audience, you control the outcome. She's not relying on corporate sponsors. She's not waiting for a brand to offer her a deal. She's not asking for a percentage of someone else's success. She's building her own. From the ground up. No middlemen. No gatekeepers. No limitations. And that's what makes this move so powerful. Because historically, role players in women's basketball haven't had access to this level of opportunity. The big endorsement deals go to the superstars. The marketing budgets are concentrated at the top. The visibility is unevenly distributed. Everyone else? They hustle. They grind. They survive. They play overseas. They piece together income streams just to stay in the game. That's been the reality for years. But now, the rules are changing. Because attention has become more valuable than contracts. And proximity to attention? That's leverage. Hull isn't just playing basketball anymore. She's operating inside a system where every appearance, every moment, every piece of visibility can be turned into something tangible. Something lasting. Something that exists beyond her playing career. And that's the real shift happening right now. Because while fans argue about rotations and analysts debate coaching strategies, a much bigger transformation is taking place beneath the surface. The league is dividing.
15 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists herself. Clark, a bomb.
Not by talent. Not by experience. Not by accolades. But by one simple factor: adaptation. On one side, you have players who see what's happening. They understand the speed of the game is changing. They understand the business landscape is evolving. They understand that survival isn't about holding on to the past, it's about aligning with the future. These players are making adjustments. Real adjustments. Sophie Cunningham reshaped her entire body, sacrificing strength for speed, rebuilding her identity to fit a faster, more dynamic system. Lexie Hull embraced a role that many players would undervalue: a defensive anchor, a floor spacer, a low-usage contributor, and turned it into a strategic advantage. Then she went even further. She turned her position next to a generational superstar into a business opportunity. Not by accident. By design. These are players who didn't wait. They didn't complain. They didn't resist change. They studied it, accepted it, and then rebuilt themselves to dominate within it. But on the other side, there are players who are still stuck, still resisting, still believing that talent alone is enough, still expecting the system to adjust to them instead of adjusting to the system. They question the attention Clark receives. They hesitate to change their playing style. They rely on seniority. They expect minutes based on reputation rather than production. And slowly, but inevitably, they're being left behind. Not because they aren't talented. Many of them are incredibly skilled. But talent without adaptation? It doesn't survive in a league that's evolving this quickly. And make no mistake, the evolution is accelerating. The WNBA of the near future will not look like the WNBA of today. It will be faster, sharper, more demanding, more commercially aware, less forgiving. Roster spots will go to players who can keep up, not just physically, but mentally and strategically. Players who understand spacing, timing, efficiency, branding, positioning, the full picture. And those who don't? They'll fade out. Quietly. confused, wondering when the game moved on without them. But Cunningham and Hull? They saw it early. They made their move early. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for validation. They didn't sit back hoping the system would reward them. They took control. Cunningham gave up the identity she spent years building because she knew it no longer fit. Hull took a role that most players overlook and turned it into leverage on the court and off it. And that combination? That's not just smart basketball. That's survival at the highest level. Because what we're witnessing right now isn't just a shift in playing style. It's a complete transformation of how the game operates. Every week, decisions are being made. Lineups adjusted. Players replaced. Strategies rewritten. Systems built that didn't even exist a few years ago. This is what real disruption looks like. Not just highlight plays and viral moments, but the quiet, high-stakes decisions happening behind the scenes. Where careers are built. Or ended. Not just on talent, but on vision. On awareness. On the ability to see what's coming before it arrives. Cunningham made her bet. Hull is building her empire. And somewhere inside that Indiana Fever locker room, the real battle hasn't even started yet. Because this was never just about Caitlin Clark changing the league. That part was inevitable. The real question, the one that will decide everything, is this: who is changing fast enough to survive her?